Hey guys, happy Friday. You guys have officially made it through your first week of semester 2, which is super exciting. And today we are going to continue on with our lesson on the atom. So before we begin, let's analyze the two atoms that are on your screen right now. Based on this, what element is represented in each atom? The correct answer for the atom on your left, or model A, is fluorine, right? Because I know that if I have 9 protons, my atom must have an atomic number of 9, which the atomic number of 9 represents the element of fluorine. The element on your right side also has 9 protons, which means that it is also fluorine, okay? However, as I look at these, I also want to keep in mind of how these atoms are different, right? We already said that both atoms have 9 protons. If you look, they also have 10 neutrons. So they're going to have the same mass number because protons plus neutrons give me my mass number, and I have a mass number of 19. The biggest difference between the two, okay, is if you look outside of the nucleus, right? And we start to look at my electrons. Model A, or your atom on your left side, has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 protons. Okay. However, the atom on the right, or model B, has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 total electrons, right? So we have 9 electrons and 10 electrons. So for the first time ever, we are seeing elements and atoms that have different number of electrons. Our goal by the end of today is that you're going to be able to determine the number of electrons in metal and nonmetal ions based on a nuclear notation. And you're also going to be able to use the term cation and anion when describing ions. And before we begin, we need to ask ourselves in general, what is an ion? To answer that question, the definition of an ion is an atom that carries an electrical charge, right? So it's either positive or negative. Up to this point, we have really only been talking about neutral atoms, right? Which means that my protons and my electrons are equal to each other. Neutral means I have no electrical charge. I am neutral, okay? However, today we're going to start to change that. Couple things to keep in mind before we start today's lesson is that the number of protons of an ion, right, or an atom, but in this case an ion, does not change. So fluorine is still going to have 9 protons, okay? In the example that we just looked at, okay, it had 10 neutrons. That number of neutrons also does not change, okay? So my atomic number and my mass numbers will remain the same. The only thing that is going to change is the number of electrons, right? So we are finally looking at what electrons are. As a reminder, right, electrons have what charge? If you said negative, you are correct, okay? Based on the fact that electrons are negative, I can gain or lose electrons, and I change the charge of my atom, okay? We have 2 types of ion. The first ion that we're going to be talking about is a cation, or a positively charged ion. And you can think of that as a cation is positively charged, right? Cats have paws. Makes sense, okay? And how it becomes a positively charged ion is that if an atom loses an electron, okay, so it's losing its negativity, okay, it's got to be more positively charged because I have more protons than I do electrons, okay? So the number of positively charged protons is more than the number of negatively charged electrons. So positive is greater than negative. And all cations are metals. Okay, this will make more sense in Unit 2, but know that for right now, cations are metals. On the other hand, okay, the opposite of a cation is an anion. Okay, Anions are negatively charged ions. You can think about it as an anion is like an onion, right? Onions make you cry, which is a negative feeling. Okay? So if an atom gains an electron, it's becoming more negatively charged, right? I'm gaining more negative. Okay? So the number of negatively charged electrons will be more than the number of positively charged protons. So negative is greater than positive. And these elements are all non-metals. Okay? Let's look at what this is looking like in an example. Okay? If I have helium and I find it on my periodic table, helium has an atomic number of 2, which means helium is going to have 2 protons in its nucleus. Okay? And if helium is neutral, that means that I have 2 protons, okay, and 2 electrons. Because in a neutral atom, my number of protons and my number of electrons are equal. If I look at this diagram on the side, right, I have 2 protons in my nucleus, but around my nucleus where my electrons lie, I only have 1. So I am no longer a neutral atom. Okay? I have lost an electron. I now have 1 more proton than I do electron. Okay? So I have more positive than I do negative. And if you remember from our previous slide, right, that a atom that has more positive than negative is a cation because it's positively charged. Okay? For my second diagram, right, I'm still looking at helium because I have 2 protons. However, I now have 3 electrons on the outside, right? So I now have 1 extra electron than I would in a neutral atom. So I have gained an electron, meaning I am more negative, right? I start with 2 negatives, now I have 3. So I have more negative and less positive, making my overall charge of my ion negative or an anion. The number in which I gain or lose electrons helps me determine the charge of my overall atom. So we are going to go through some examples together in the next slide. Okay, you have these in your notes. I'm going to go through chlorine with you together, and then you can fill out oxygen and magnesium. When I look at chlorine, I see my nuclear notation, how we've been seeing it. But I also see this charge of a -1 at the top. Okay? So as I fill it out, I'm going to fill it out exactly how we've been filling it out in the past, right? When I look at this chlorine ion, okay, because I know it's an ion because it no longer has a neutral, it has that charge of a -1. I know I can find my atomic number by looking in my bottom left-hand corner. So my atomic number for chlorine is 17. Okay. I know that my mass number is my number on top. So my mass number for this ion is 35. Okay. How I find my number of protons is exactly how I've been finding my number of protons in the past, right? My atomic number tells me the number of protons. So if my atomic number is 17, I must have 17 protons in my atom. Okay. My number of neutrons, we find it the same way that we have been finding it in the past as well, right? I know that my protons plus my neutrons give me my mass number. So if I have 35 as my mass number, 17 of that is protons. I take 35 minus 17. I'm going to have 18. Okay. This is when it gets a little bit more complicated. Okay. I have a -1 charge now. And we said that if I have a negative charge, okay, it must mean that I have more electrons, right? I'm more negative, okay? So unlike in a neutral where I would have 17 electrons, okay, I have to have more. And this number next to that negative sign tells me how many more, okay? So if I had 17 protons here, I'm going to have 18 electrons, okay? Because I should have 17 in neutral, but I have one extra, okay? Based on the fact that I am negative, I'm going to be a anion. And I know that all anions are non-metals. Okay? So based on this information, what I want you to do right now is I want you to pause this video and I want you to fill out the oxygen and the magnesium ion chart. All right, welcome back. I hope you guys have filled out this chart. If you have questions, please raise your hand and make sure that you have checked the chart on the solution station to make sure that you're getting the right answers. Now that you have completed your chart, I want you to now complete your worksheet that you picked up at the front of the classroom on your way in that says isotopes, ions, and atoms. Okay. It is similar to what we've been doing every single day, except for today we're now taking into consideration ions and charges. Once you are done, you can check the solution station at the front of the room. Okay, if you finish ahead of time, you can do any other worksheets that you've been doing in the past couple days. And sit tight because we're going to be doing another POGIL activity later on today. That is it for today's video. I hope you guys have a good weekend. And I will talk to y'all soon.